Let's talk about Google. Thomas Hayes joins us, founder, chairman, and managing member of the Great Hill Capital. Good to see you. Welcome back, sir. Here's my theory in this. People are going back to work. They can't be sitting there surfing, YouTube all day. Of course there's less people doing that because of work. I mean, I guess you could just not work and sit there and surf the web all day, but ultimately, are we making too big of a deal about this?
I think you're absolutely right, Phil. As a matter of fact, Ruth Porat, the CFO, noted that they were lapping very strong growth. And to your point, people are at home, a lot less to do, and now they're back into their regular routines. They're going out and about. I mean, look, they were expected to have 71 billion of revenues. They had 69, expected to have 128 in EPS. They had 106. I think there are a couple highlights here. First and foremost, in constant currency, they were up 11% in revenues, and that's following really significant growth. So that's the good news. The bad news is their expenses are out of control. The cost of revenue was up 13.2%, and they've got to get a handle of that. And I think they certainly are going to do that. The operating margin dropped to 25% from 32% the last quarter. But if you look segment by segment, Phil, it's not all bad news. Google Search, despite the points that you laid out, was up 4% year on year. So what is everyone upset about? Everyone's upset about YouTube was down 2%. Obviously, they're getting some action from TikTok is taking attention away, and they're trying to get back with Shorts. Shorts has 1.5 billion users and 30 billion daily views, and they just turned on the ad feature in September. So I think that's going to be a source of growth moving forward on the Google network was down 2%. So you are seeing some hits in advertising. But the big highlight that I think is getting lost in the weeds here is Google Cloud was up 37.6%. And this is the growth driver for the future. They did close to 7 billion in revenues, up from close to 5 billion last year. The segment is still losing money, but if you look at AWS's growth, they went from low operating margins for Amazon to now they've got about a 29% operating margin on AWS on 62 billion in revenue.
Okay, hang on one sec. So AWS is, of course, Amazon's big money-making elephant, right? And Google Cloud has always been second to both Microsoft and Google. And there's been a lot of criticism of why Google can't get more market share. Are they finally getting the strategy right, or are we going to be talking about the struggle 2 quarters from now?
Yeah, I think they are. It's just they're starting from a small base. So that 37% growth is pretty impressive. And actually, to give them some credit, Ruth Porat did say the cost of revenue being up 13.2%, a lot of that was attributable to data centers and hardware, and that speaks to investment in cloud growth. So I think you're going to see more benefits from that moving forward. They do have to get costs under control, and they did address that in the call. They're going to cut employee growth by half. They didn't say they're going to cut employees. They said they're going to cut the growth of hiring. They went from 150,000 employees last year at this time to 186,000. So they really hired anyone with a pulse in the last 12 months that wanted to work for Google.
I think the employees at Google might take offense to that. Let me ask you this, though. What does it say about the rest of the tech industry, right? It's great we care about Google, but Google is such a giant that what they say says a lot about the whole industry. And we are all worried about the tech industry, right? It had this huge rise. Now it's kind of pulled back a little bit. And now we're facing this recession and sort of this global slowdown. I mean, there are consequences to what's happening right now in the economy.
Yeah, I think we're going to see across the board. We're seeing a little bit with Microsoft. They beat on the top and bottom line, but their Azure guidance was a little bit light. So we're lapping very, very high, unprecedented growth rates from 2021, and we just have to take a deep breath and see the growth is going to be a little slower. Look, the Fed has done everything they can possibly do to destroy demand. Okay, so that's going to work through on a lag basis, and in some sense, as we've started to see in recent weeks, Phil, bad news is good news because the market is starting to price that the Fed is going to be ending their tightening cycle in the near term as we see demand destruction. We still have to see the jobs report. We still have to see the CPI numbers. But on balance, they're succeeding in bringing down demand. and that will be a good thing as we look in the
I
intermediate
absolutely hate
term.
doing this to you because I'm basically arguing against you, which I mostly agree. But here's the devil's advocate here is that they may stop raising rates tomorrow, okay? But
Yeah.
long-term rates are not coming down. They're going to keep the rates here, and keeping the rates here is enough to sink the housing market. It's enough to, I don't want to build a factory. I don't want to do this. We're not going to invest in that. And it's really the shrinking of the money pool, right? And it's basically quantitative, not easing, but now tightening. How long is this going to go for?
Yeah, I mean, look, there's no question about it. You had M2 money supply expand, some $6 trillion, and the growth and expansion has come down quite a little bit. But if they take $1 or $2 trillion of liquidity out of the system, it's just going to normalize that GDP growth back to, subpar growth, 2% growth, and get us on a more normal track versus the galloping track that we had with all the liquidity pumped into the system. So it's just a equilibrium process. We're trying to get back to normalized levels. But if you look at, UPS was strong. Everyone thought they were going to be a disaster after FedEx pre-announcement. Visa shows the consumer is strong. Even Coca-Cola today was pretty strong. You heard the banks last week. Brian Moynihan, the CEO of Bank of America, saying the consumer balance sheet is strong. The savings are strong. The spending is still strong. So I think on balance, we're just going through a moderation here. But when I look at that cloud growth, when I look at the general search and other here, it's not a disaster. Yes, it's down 6% in the aftermarket, but it's also rallied more than that in the last week and a half.
Thomas Hayes
was down 2% after a big rally in the last week. So we're going to take a little breather here the next couple of days, regroup, and then possibly have a push further into year end.
I love the optimism. Thomas Hayes, always good to have you on the big show. Thank you.